When you read the poem, just read it, stand up and in.
Okay, stand where?
Up into the microphone.
Into the mic. Okay. Right, here I come. And I'll just give the welcoming thank you. And I'll so it doesn't spill. And here it spills on the floor. On the floor, sur le fleur.
It spills on the floor, it spills on the floor. That's a good first
We
line.
don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want to upset the apple cart any more than it has been upset. I'll just recite one, and I'll distribute them. Do that. Okay, righto. We ready? Now, is this the mic? And I speak into it? How do I speak
From
into
this
it?
side with the... Speak in there.
In here. Okay.
Preventer. That's it.
Okay.
Pop filter.
Welcome to our poetry slam here at the Uniting Church. We've got several people here, and it's going to be a very lively poetry discussion and recitation. And today's date is the 18th. I think Michael, he knows all the dates. The 18th of May, and the time's round about 11ish, 11:15, 11:10. And I'm going to start off by reading a poem. Now, just a bit of explanation. I don't want to go too much into the explanation. I arrived in Canberra in November 1968. It was a very hot day, and I was not impressed when I came to Civic. Civic was a dull and rather dreadful place, and whatever else John Stanhope, the former Chief Minister, has done, he's made Canberra a bit more lively. Well, it certainly wasn't lively then. So I'm trying to recapture my thoughts on this day, and I'll read it without any glossing of the words. It's called On Sighting Civic. A weekday in November 1968, round and out the airport, begone all off-ground fears. To blue sky, white heat Civic, Canberra's small town centre. Mid-afternoon, this Tuesday, my feelings had tempered wind. Is this Australia's capital, where we are bound 2 years? It means bonded, as we were in the National Library. You've been before, my mother said. An infant a year before the war. Like a babe I dreaded, swaddling in hostel, where soon I'd eat my tea. So to a shop I wandered for the local rag and news, ragged, trite and twee. I got the Canberra Times and left, soft jostled by a big bad Boer who'd headed for the pawn shelves to scan and leer and pry. No bus in view, a taxi blew. I hailed, he stopped. National Library, please, before they closed the door. No bus in view. Oh, I've said that, haven't I? Time yet for tea and sadness grey for Melbourne, where I want now to flee. I'm Bill Tully, and that was my poem on Sighting Civic. And there's going to be more poetry recited and more criticism of it. And John, have you got yours nearly ready? Or? You're getting it done. Well, I think the thing about meeting here in this, with the kind permission of the Uniting Church, which we've been doing for over 2 years now, I think, a year and a half anyway, is that we talk, we discuss, we criticise freely and in good humour the poems that we are putting onto YouTube, courtesy of John Sledge. And we have a visitor behind me who's come and sort of looking at us, and maybe got a poem to read. And I think we've got David, who's got a poem he might like to read too. Would you like to come up to the mic and read the poem? Thanks, David.
I've got a couple actually. I've been writing it a little bit, and thanks, John, for this, because it's pretty cool. And Bill and Michael and Colin, thanks. Yeah. So, all right. Well, I'll just start. I wrote this on the 12th of May, just the other day. It's called Looking. The tall, the thin, the angry, the happy, the loved, the lost, the found, the fallen, the proud, the poor, the rich, the good, the bad, the bright, the slow, the quick, all looking for the same thing. I've got a second poem. I've got three really that I'd like to read. The second is it's just something nice that happened to me, and it's untitled. I found a set of Christmas tree lights today. Tonight I plugged them in and made a heart on the lounge room floor. In the darkness it was beautiful, listening to Snow Patrol, watching the warmth of the lights ebb and flow, rise and fall. And then the last of the four that I've written, but three that I'll read, is untitled as well. And last night I had a nice experience going to 2XX community radio Spanish show, and this is what happened before, in the green room if you like, but it wasn't a green room. So untitled. Spoken Spanish, like a flamenco, like old friends, gentle and direct, while waiting for the program to begin. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much. John, I'd like to recite his. You're going up the mic now? Give me a pen back so I can do it.
Yeah, well, I just wrote this. It's called Buttonz. Don't push my button. You don't know what you'll find. Buttons don't rip, buttons don't climb. Buttons, if you push, you might set the world on fire. Buttons, leaders push buttons, followers push buttons. Middlemen push buttons, most people wear buttons. Buttons.
Very good. That's good.
I'll try to take that advice, John.
No, buttons are what start wars too, aren't they? We've got a Collins.
My name is Colin Hales, and I've got some stuff in there that I'm working on, but it's not ready. So I'll recite a couple. But I would like to just say that I came to Canberra in '73, and I sort of echo Bill's sentiments from that time. Like, is this the nation's capital? But the one I wrote just recently is a haiku that I wrote for somebody's goodbye, when somebody was leaving the work where I am. Time flows gently by. The young, so much, so swiftly. Time flows gently by.
That's good.
When you see it written, you can actually see where the commas are, and it's nicer.
Yeah, that's the thing about poetry, isn't it? That often written in a special way, it says a lot more to the people. It's a sort of visual thing as well as an oral. I mean, traditionally it's oral, but I think the flow and the sound is that way. And it's telling a story as well, and it's giving an opinion. I mean, the Buttonz poem is good because Buttonz were pushed to start World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, and they can, start all sorts of conflicts. And they're such innocent little things, Buttonz. I mean, kids have got them on there all over them, and it's rather
That's a good one.
sort of interesting, isn't it?
Particularly, I mean, to come up with something that actually had meaning and feeling in such a short space of time. That's good. Anyway, I have one more that I actually wrote some years ago, and I read in public a number of years ago as well. But seeing it's going to be on YouTube, I better do something good. I sit and look through the veils of economic freedom towards what others have, whilst passing through what fees they say I must. And it doesn't bother me that they have what they have, but that they say that I can't have any of what I need. And at the same time, they preemptively defend what they have with rights. And so I sit, enmeshed by their rights and their freedoms, and wonder why I have none. And having never wanted more, I now have less. Thanks.
Very Shakespeare indeed. Look, John's writing another poem now. I think he might be even amending it, I'm not sure. But while he's doing it, I'll do another one. YouTube here at the Uniting Church, and a very good lot of people here reciting poetry. And this one I've got is called Youths All Go to Old Age Glow, about youth and ageing. And I've experienced both. And I've tried to put it into this poem, which is a bit longer than the other one. I hope it doesn't bore people, but it may. If it does, yawn audibly, because you're on YouTube, and it'd be nice to add to the atmosphere. It's in it's in two stanzas, one of 4 lines and the other I think about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1 in 8. So it's 12 lines altogether. And it's autobiographical, about how I feel. One of the things about getting older, and I won't sort of go on about myself or getting older or anything like that because it's a boring subject, is that you speak as you want to speak. You don't try and be diplomatic. You try and see through the bullshit. And there's a lot of it around in the society we're in. And Canberra is renowned for a sort of false gentility, where we're all nice to one another. Well, I don't believe in that. I think I'd prefer plain speaking. Anyway, that's what happens when you get older. Anyway, youths all go to old age glow. Older and less active, I like the lively young, who stretch their strength and grasp life's feast. While 73's a fallow glebe, low-wired and less strung, bright youth will taste life's juices, enduring work's dull yeast. So here's the go on my workflow from 17 to 30, the ages. In Mount Gambier I trolled wool as my jacket gathered fibres. At year's end I left the mill, neither whinging nor sour shirty. For a Melbourne state-owned airline where I got fresh new vibes. And clerked it through, excuse me, until in time due got a 4-year diploma. Till other skills enticed me in books and libraries galore. 10 years of TAA was done, and in 65 I went for a new room. To libraries and schools in Melbourne and elsewhere to learn and work a little more. Right, John, here you go, mate. He's nearly there. I'll get up and talk a bit. The thing about poetry is that it's everybody can do it. Everybody does do it, from little babies when they're whinging and wowling to old gentlemen when they're grinding and growling, such as I suppose we do when we get a bit older. But the joy of poetry, as done here, and as done, with lots of people about, because we've got 5 at the moment, which is 1 up by 2, I think, Michael, isn't it? You counted the people last. I think we've got a couple more, and that's good. But maybe it'd be nice if we got a little bit of criticism from some of the critics onto some of the poems that we've read, maybe as a heap. How are we going on them? What's their style? And what do you think of them, Michael?
Well, talking about Colin's poem, it was very interesting. It was about very modest needs. He was talking about the things that he needs, whereas everyone else, well, a lot of the rich people get more than they certainly need, probably more than they want, really. There seems to be a never-ending reservoir for things that they can have at every whim, and all you would really like was just just a few things to keep you going, to keep you cheerful during the day.
Just those basic needs.
Monetary value.
Yeah.
And it seems that every day you get less and less. Sort of, yeah.
And I don't know if you said they're even more than they want. I think actually their wants are what is never ending, and it's.
Because I think they overdose on what they have sometimes. They'd be happy if they Probably.
It's
And
been shown actually that
Canberra has
the less you have, the more likely you are to be happy.
yes. I mean, Canberra has got the description of being a town of fat cats, you know, so.
And thin cats too now, lots of thin cats.
The bit that I really like in the poem Michael's talking about is the none more less in the last 3 lines. You know, having never wanted more, I now have less.
No, I think that's good. I think also it shows Canberra's evolution in a way, because that's one of the things poetry can do. It can be useful. It can show just
And
what's
the haiku
going
has
on.
a nice rhythm to it, the repetition and then the line in between, yeah. It sort of highlights the line in between.
John's now ready. Sorry, mate. Unless you've got something to say.
I do quite like haiku because you've got to try and get just 17 syllables, but actually and still have differentiation of meaning, like not just one line kind of thing.
Yes.
That's Japanese, of course.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
John, welcome.
I just come up with another one. I don't know, we'll see. I woke up, the day was cold, the sun not shining brightly, come join the fold. Noises in the air, look, I got no hair, don't need the fight no more. I'm back, getting on track, going places, leaving traces, showing faces, we've all more than one, yeah, faces that be. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think the eye.
I do notice a certain rebellious character to both of your pieces.
Well,
Yes, John. Yeah. Well, it's good to be a rebel.
I get fired up.
Mao Zedong said once, "It is good to rebel."
That poem's a bit showing a bit of assertiveness.
It's a rebellious poem. I think it's good to rebel. Sit down and taking things is one way of doing it, but as Mao said, and he changed China. He didn't just sit down and talk about it, for good or for worse. And he wasn't perfect, we know that. But that to me is a much more, what shall we say, active way of doing things, whether you do it in small ways or large ways. Anybody else wants to come up to the mic and say something? And something more? Well, I'll chat on for as long as we will, unless we've got another poem somewhere there. Or
I could go one.
Colin, good on
Good
you.
on you, Colin.
All yours.
The mic is yours.
This is a sort of self-affirmation piece. Excuse me. I am the poet of the century. What need have I of a curriculum vitae? I am the rabbi of the rhythm. I am the priestess of the pentameter, rabbi of the rhythm, mullah of mellifluence, am shaman of the shamalam, bishop of the bobshwap, guru of the groove. I am magnificence.
Marvellous. It's a good way to feel.
Yeah.
Good way to feel proud of what you are and proud of what you're doing.
Good, but still denying that you need to fit into the
Yes!
this is me on paper kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and that's one of the things about our little on tube, and thanks to John, you're on YouTube, on this,
That
what is
was
it?
a poem that sounded a proclamation. You were proclaiming things.
But in a sort of a tongue-in-cheek way.
Yeah.
I don't think you were saying you were going to do, take over the world or anything like you. Maybe you were, but I think that's a good way to be.
Take a word but do it softly.
David, you might have just a few things to say about the poetry.
I was just thinking, thanks, Bill. Thanks, John, because I'm really shy, and poetry for me was a way of kind of
Helping you come out of your shell?
yeah, because I am quite shy, and I always thought I was kind of gentle, and often I'd kind of pretend to be maybe I don't know, someone else, but anyway, poetry is kind of like the real me, and it's a really nice experience to write and have something to look forward to where I can kind of present, and YouTube's such a cool medium because like the message that you put out gives other people hope, and even like if you stuff it up, well that's okay, because that's a little bit of a message of hope too. So thanks, John, and thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah.
John, what do you reckon? What do we do now? We've sort of got our poems done.
Yeah.
We can distribute them. I'll say something about that. Do it.
Yeah.
your style, I do need the written.
Yeah, that's a very good point made by Colin. The sort of poetry I write does need the written, and I'll just go around and just review some of them anyway. And you can read it and maybe make a few comments from the written text. It's good to have a text.
So when you read out the next poem, we will be able to follow it by looking at...
No, we're going to concentrate on this. You found something, have you?
You were only supposed to be here for 2 years?
Yeah. That's very true. Yes, when I first came to Canberra, I was only meant to be here for... I had to stay here for 2 years, and I did. And I got to like the place, and now I'm sort of part of it. So I don't know what that says about me. But there's another poem, several more to be written about.
Well, I came here from New Zealand heading to England. And my
What
family
happened?
was here and yeah, I'm still here.
It's a place
Did you ever make it to England, John?
No, never been there.
Did you ever make it to England?
Oh, I might one day.
You could see Queen Elizabeth.
Well, that's where my ancestors
I've never been to
come
Europe.
from.
You've never been beyond Australia?
No, I've been to everywhere except Asia and Europe and Antarctica, but
So you've been to... What place have you been to?
well, on the way to Australia from the States, we came through South America and Africa.
Okay.
So that, you know,
Yeah.
You've been, if not everywhere, you've been somewhere.
I've been in parts of most places.
Yeah, being there really is important for everybody to sort of do. But I'm a solitary beast. I tend to sort of be stuck here doing things and enjoying doing things. And talking, of course, is very important, I think, for many of us. And other people may perhaps have had adventures in South America or something. You might like to talk about that, how that's informed you as we've been here. And the difference between Canberra and Guatemala, say.
Seeing that we've been talking about our arrivals in Canberra back in the late 60s or early 70s, my family left the States to come here, and we were reasonably well off over there, had a maid. And we came through South America, and I always remember just being struck by the poverty in Peru, in Lima, and crawling around in this lagoon on the beach with these other kids our age, and catching little yabbies and little fishes and things, and going and squeezing them out of the seaweed and putting them in a plastic bag. And then when it came time for them to leave, we asked, well, aren't you going to let all the little animals go? And they said, no, this is dinner. And that just appalled me. But and then we came to Australia, and it was sort of about halfway between. So it's come a long way since then, particularly Canberra. The skyline's changed completely.
It has.
2 or 3 times.
It has. Yeah, I think that's a very good point. One of the things that gets me going is how Canberra's changed, and some thanks has to go to John Stanhope, because the place was really a little town, 100,000, even less, in the times we came. Now it's a big city, and it's vibrant, and there's a lot of vibrant characters around. And there's a vibrant radio station, 2XX FM 98.3, where there was a Spanish program last night. Now, it might be interesting, just taking up your theme of being in Spanish America, if David just gives us a bit of a feel, because I guess William, who is one of our members of the group, might have recited something there. Just tell us about the radio and your experience.
Well, it was really just a bit of a chance kind of, I guess, encounter, and that I went up to find out about volunteering, and I'd been in there once before with a friend of mine, a social worker, Keith Mahar, who I have an enormous amount of respect for, and I'm very appreciative of his help. And the first time I went up there, I just, it just seemed to me to be exactly what a small community radio station would be, and it was well organised and just a few rooms, and the mixing desk was manual, and last night when I bumped into William, he invited me in, and he and his offsider were going through the rehearsal, what they were going to present on the Spanish radio show, and it was a nice sort of atmosphere. William read Pablo Neruda. He's got a poetry book on love, which I thought was pretty special, and I'll have to find it and read it. But William brought this in and read one of the poems, and I didn't understand really much of anything that he read, but it sounded great. And it's the funny thing about poetry, that even in a different language, it still sounds lovely, the tempo and the rhythm and the cadence. And particularly in Spanish, it was just great. So, como estás, William? And really, that's all I have to say about that.
No, that's good, because that's poetry on radio, and 2XX has literature programs, Spanish programs, all sorts of language programs.
Yeah.
And it allows people to come and talk about things political. It's somewhat radical, a little less radical than it used to be.
It's quite radical.
Yeah.
It used to be very, very, in the 70s and when it started, and it's still going. And I think it's important that this sort of spirit still survives, because if we don't keep it going, heaven knows what we might become.
Well, one idea I had this morning, which I sort of enjoyed, it was a little epiphany, and I get them from time to time, and they're becoming more frequent, I'm happy to report, and it makes me really happy. The poetry is great for that.
Yes.
It must be very similar to doing crosswords. As you get older, the more you exercise your mind, the more it frees it up. And so the epiphany this morning was that in the audience is the joy. The art itself is meaningless unless there's an audience to appreciate it. And that was the epiphany I had while walking here this morning. And it is again that message of hope, and that I read a nice passage in a book called Steppenwolf about a man struggling between good and bad, really, in his life. And the most beautiful passage in it, I thought, was where he describes probably an artist's kind of experience, where he rises up from kind of the throng of the crowd, where everyone is in amongst the masses, and it must be pretty depressing, and then for a brief instant an artist lifts up and everyone looks up and just sees this rising star, and it kind of illuminates the huddled masses with just a brief brilliant moment of joy and hope. And so the idea of radio now kind of appeals to me, so I'd like to join in perhaps the classical music or the poetry program on Monday.
That's great.
But yeah, thanks.
That's terrific.
Thanks.
Having just spoken about William, I had a text from him last night. I actually thought he was going to be here, but the text message was "Vaya con Dios."
Yes, William. Yes, thanks, and come back next week, please, to our group. Michael will be here, and I'd like to get John to come up to the mic now. But before I do, just a few words of thanks to him for getting us on YouTube, because this is one way of sharing ourselves with whoever is watching the YouTube. It's very important. I think the technology that we have around at the moment, as Michael knows, he knows technology inside and out, is important if you can get across to people. And technology generally does, in one way or another. Not as well as maybe it could, but we are living in a capitalist society where people are making money out of technology, so I think we shouldn't just brush that aside. That's a very important issue. But John, you might like to come up and just talk about what we're doing now, how it's fitting in, and if you've got a poem, read the poem as well.
No, I don't have a poem.
Let's talk a bit about what we're doing here.
About one of the movies you might be working
Oh yeah, well,
Seen the movie.
because I'll tell Dave a bit about this movie that I'm making, since I haven't actually told him. The film It's called Shadows of the Clockwork Factory. And if you've seen the film A Clockwork Orange, you'll know what a Droog is. And the film starts off where there's a gang of Droogs walking down the street, and they come to an underpass, and they come across an old man molesting a young boy, right? And they go and give him a horror show toll chocking. In other words, they bash him up, kick the living daylights out of him, and they rescue the young boy, and they take him back to their commune, and they decide that they have a big grand council of Droogs sort of thing, and they decide that they're going to go out and rescue all these molested children and teach them how to protect themselves in a clockwork sort of fashion. And then, well, there's actually 2 doorways in their commune. The other doorway goes to this place where, well, to get there, they go out and find all these old men that are molesters and that, and they capture them and bring them back, and then through the second doorway they lock them all in cages and they perform experiments on them to try and find cures for AIDS and all the diseases that people say are uncurable. Well, they do vivisection on them. Instead of doing it on animals, they do it on child molesters. And like, there's going to be punk rock bands and other sorts of bands and that playing through it and all that sort of thing. So it's
sort of a vengeance exercise, by the
well, you have to show a bit of darkness to eventually get to the light. That's what it's showing, how I see it. Well, from my personal experience, I know that
there's a lot of it about darkness.
Yeah, there's a lot of darkness, and to get to the light, you have to show that darkness.
Not much seen in Canberra in many respects.
No, well,
I mean, more of it now, but it's not traditionally not a dark city. But I think people perhaps hope too much for light when you know they have to actually fight whatever it is that you define as dark, and there's a lot of darkness about. Everything's not just beautiful around us.
No, definitely not. Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
Any?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I recently, I've been kind of fearful the last sort of probably 12 months of my life, and developed a really strong relationship with, my spiritual kind of higher authority, and who I choose to kind of call God, and I've kind of been a bit, afraid to explore intellectual ideas because I just wanted to stay as close as I could to the Bible. But right now, I'm at a point where I'm kind of having a bit more courage to kind of explore this stuff now that I've got more of a firm base. And it's like, the ideas like are really interesting, because someone who's committed a heinous crime like that, I think it's really healthy to discuss what consequences and repercussions, because if you don't set an example or you don't punish people for having done something wrong, well, it's going to be anarchy. And so I am kind of interested in justice and law and order and community now a lot more than I ever was. And what I find intriguing about John's idea is, okay, well, these people, they've done something, and I guess you've got to find out exactly why they did it. Were they sick, or were they evil, or were they, I don't know. There's so many reasons. One cool thing I learned at uni when I did ambulance was there's heaps of different reasons why someone can be mentally, acting in a funny way. They can have low blood sugar, might be alcohol, might be drugs, might be something wrong with their kidneys, might be organic brain disorder, could be psychiatric. There's so many different things. So in working out why these people did this thing and then sending them, to the second door, which is John's idea, I think it's healthier instead of me sticking my head in the sand to explore it. So straight away, like, yeah, I do believe in punishment, but I don't believe in medical experimentation on unwilling subjects. And I know that because I've read a little bit about what happened in World War II. And you can have all the right reasons, I think, ethically, you know, philosophically, and that's all cool. And but I don't think it matters, you know, what crime. It does matter what crime someone's done. People do need to be punished, I think, for crimes. But I don't think kind of cruel and unusual medical experimentation is, yeah. But I do like talking about it now, so thank you.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's two very interesting views of a very complex subject. And I think literature and poetry can be very helpful, as well as politics, because I don't think you can get away with without politics. I think if you try to, you're living in a fool's paradise, because it's how we are ruled, who the rulers are, what they do, how they do it, that bring these attitudes. For instance, the asylum seekers, they're all being punished by the government, not by us. I think most people would like to see asylum seekers given asylum. I think that's the most common and good thing about it. There may be difficulties, but they can be worked out. So we do need a better governed society, and I think poetry can be radical. I think it can be something that voices inner desires, and maybe even outer desires, maybe even a revolutionary ethos. Revolutions are very unpopular at the moment, but it's necessary, and it has to be done in some situations where injustice is so palpably awful, which it hasn't got to in Australia yet, but certainly in some of the Latin American countries we were talking about earlier, and in Mexico at the moment with the drug barons. It's appalling. There's injustice everywhere. Something has to be done. You can't sit back and just let these things happen. And you've got to get people together to talk about it. And people generally are good. Governments can be good. They can be democratic or they can be autocratic. But poetry in this group here, and I think it's almost time to wind up, John, isn't it? So thanks everybody for David and Colin and John, and Michael and me, Bill, on this 18th of May 2011, and we'll be back here next week.